psycho nuts guy, and when the guy puts a gun in your face, you go, do it, I want to die, and you go right up to the muzzle and say, give me it, right? Like,
take the shot.
Well, there could be something like that, but in general, a lot of things that people claim as like it's all relative, right? Whenever you hear somebody say that, just know probably they're wrong, right? If they just are like, it's all relative, isn't it, man? Oh, okay, I don't know, right? Like,
yeah, but what I meant is like you say like, oh, it's God's fault. It's like this fault. You can't
here's
like.
A great example.
That's like personal.
Here's a great example. In fact, so much of it is not relative. There's nothing relative about language, and you might say, wait, that sounds wrong. It's all relative. No way, dude. Try and start using the word blue in place of the color red, and realize how everybody around you will quickly make you realize you can't do that, right? And so there's no relativism there. It's not like it's all relative, man. To me, it's blue. No way, dude. We call that red.
That doesn't make sense, though. I feel like it's like
what doesn't make sense? That the community decides your meaning, and there's nothing relative about that.
That state of mind.
What's relative about this? What's relative about this color? That's red. You can't say, well, to me, man, it's kind of blue. It's red. It's red, buddy. Right? If you start calling that, I'm going to call that, it's all relative to me, brother. I'm going to call it blue. Right? It's not going to work there. You're going to go out there and you're going to have a language unto yourself.
Yeah, I mean, but,
so that's not relative then.
But it is relative to different aspects or whatever. Yeah.
What does that mean? Like, you mean, I don't know. Now I'm filling in the gap for you. You got it relative to different aspects. Very vague.
Yeah, it is.
Now maybe I could say if I was a bug, I see colors in different wavelengths. So, right?
Yeah.
But now, hold on though. But we're not bugs. And we're not talking about what bugs think.
Yeah.
We're talking about stuff for humans to get by in their daily life. So when we're talking about relative, that's something we got to clean up.
Yeah.
Because this isn't relative. This is red. If I say, and here's why we got to clean this up. If I say, if you're from a foreign land, right? You're from the jungle, and I say, green means go, red means stop, and you go out to that street and you're like, it's all relative, and you go on the red, you just died. You just got ran over.
What would you mean by it's all relative when you say that instead of not considering? Like, what do you mean by that? Like, oh, it's all relative,
God
so
exists.
I'm just going to walk into this.
God exists. So here's what really comes into this.
I see what you're saying.
God exists, and then I'm a Christian. God exists, and I'm like trying to philosophy. I'm like, no, God doesn't exist. I'm an atheist, and the guy comes along, the first level philosopher, and says, yeah, it's all relative, guys, right? To her there's God, to him there's no God. And honestly, it's that kind of stuff that can be cleaned up. That's the one facet where philosophy can use language to clean language, where philosophy can clean the language up, right? And maybe they can get past what they're being confused on, what they're both being confused on, the atheist and the Christian, right?
Yeah.
Because and mainly the philosopher says it's all relative, right? The philosopher is actually the most confused one in this scenario because he says it's all relative, but it's not relative at all. If the way you're using language, if you use language correctly, you start to really explain what each of them are really saying, right?
Yeah.
And it's so simple.
But it can
too,
be.
right? No, hold on. It's so simple too. Watch, I'm going to do that. I'm going to work this through. I'm going to try and do this real quick. So a better philosopher comes along and says, let's just add these words, right? And I know you won't argue with them, right? And you say, I believe. And we're just going to add that to both your statements now. Instead of God exists or God doesn't exist, now I'm just going to add these words. Now it's I believe that God exists, and I believe that God doesn't exist. Oh, there's something interesting there. Now we just made those statements so that there's nothing actually false about them. And even better, now we can start to understand what they might be having in common, because what cleared away their muddles was introducing the notion of the idea that they were believing.
Yeah.
Right?
But couldn't you say that they're relative to like each other because they're like the anti-thought of the other? You know?
No.
Why not? I mean, you can't have one of those.
Because atheists aren't the anti-thought of Christianity.
But you can't have that.
Christians aren't the anti-thought. Christians aren't the anti-thought of God.
They're the anti-thought of atheists. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they believe.
That's just you looking at it.
I mean, that's
just
obviously
you looking at it dualistically.
But what I'm saying is, like, you can't have one question without
the Christians aren't basing their God off of what not God is. Well, and the atheists aren't basing the non-existence of God off of what God is. In fact, you're falling prey to the same thing, right? But you're trying, and so that's good at least.
Well, I mean, like, what I'm saying is the essence of
Essence.
The essence, or I don't know if this is the right phrase.
The essence. No, we had an essence, but you want to skip right past it. The essence was when we added "I believe" onto it.
Well,
that was the essence. Is when we added "I believe."
Well, what's interesting, I think, is belief actually creates a duality, because when you say belief, that means there's a possibility that it is or isn't.
If you believe in a duality, then belief creates a duality.
Well, what I'm saying is, if you believe in God, then it's possible for someone to say, "I don't believe in God," you know. But you can't have that statement.
It doesn't contradict
the belief of.
It doesn't contradict what you say, and it's not the antithesis of what you say either. It's just a different statement.
But you can't have one.
Hold on. Though. If I assert that you stole the cookies, that is a statement. If you say I did not, you can say that's a denial of a statement. But what that is also, it's that too. Yeah. It's another statement making an assertion.
Yeah.
So they're both assertions, right? So it's not like you negated anything. You really didn't, right? You just made a statement. It's different than mine, right? So I say God, you say not God, right?
Yeah.
That's not contradicting me, right? You might want to say that because you want everyone to believe. Here's the weird part: is you want everyone, but we're going to go back to this term that I said was underneath it all, the belief. You want everyone to believe that there's God.
No.
But if you say, I believe in God, and somebody says, I believe there is no God, where is the contradiction? Unless you want somehow to put your intention, your belief package, somehow in the other person's heads, and you want them to say, I don't believe in God, therefore you don't believe in God.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a contradiction. I'm just saying that you can't have one statement without the other. I think, you know, there's a reason for someone to explain.
Yes, you can.
Well, I mean, can you?
Any philosopher can say it's all God, and there's no not God. Yeah. And not God is actually God. Not God is a facet of God, just like the spaces between the words.
That's what I'm saying, though.
Like the spaces between the words make sure that the words make sense too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the whole aspect of not believing in God has to be there if someone believes in God. If there's a person that says, I believe in God, there's obviously going to be someone that reacts in the opposite direction of it. There's got to be. There always is. That's what creates the dualistic thing.
You're talking some like conceptual Newtonian stuff or something. For every belief, there's an equal yet opposite belief, right?
Yeah.
Sure, I guess.
Yeah. But I mean, that obviously encompasses the whole God and not God.
That has nothing to do
with
what's right or correct or true or works or is experienced or happening or any of that stuff. That's still a lot of illusion stuff in the head.
Just categorizing shit or whatever.
Which may need to be cleaned up, right? Like the very because we're using God and no God. These are terms that they're both really full of shit, right? They're both missing vast points and they're ignorant and short-sighted, and so because of that, then you can have fights with them. Then you can say I contradict you, and you know, who knows? It's all moral relativism.
But isn't that relative to how you understand the entity of what God is, or something like that? You know, like if you think of it as like a character or guy in the sky or whatever.
But you're already wrong then for doing that.
So well, I mean,
you're
that's
already
what I'm
thinking
saying.
about him like a guy and a character. I'm just saying. I'm not saying wrong, but you're already coming at it to a point where you're going to run into paradoxes and contradictions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the universe doesn't have a contradiction. The universe doesn't have paradoxes. Language creates contradictions and paradoxes. And then we have a hard time seeing past them because we have so much invested in language. Yeah. Right? Language is a major portion of how reality figures into our existence, right? Like, because you could say the word existence, right? You could start talking about the word existence. So I say this exists. And this exists, and this exists, and this exists. And I can swish my hand through the air and even feel that exists. But now you say God. I don't know. I can conceptualize all sorts of neat theoretical shit and try and equate this with that. But I can't go like, God exists. Here's some God, right? And some
people do say that though.
No, but they're wrong. They're just trying to make, like I said, they're conceptualizing, making weird intellectual
arguments. But isn't that relative to their state of mind?
Hold on. No, it's not, because the same thing saying, look, this is not God. So you can't talk about God that way. So I want you to realize there's a trick going on there. You're just hold on before you run to the.
I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that's what people do. You know.
Well, but that's not. But who cares what people
I mean,
do?
we're just
Because
talking-
people are not.
yeah.
People do everything. Let's just be honest. People do everything wrong. Because they
But
don't
isn't
care.
that relative to their background and everything? And
No,
all
there's
that shit?
nothing relative there. You just all
Kind
you
of
just
is.
said was lots of people do wrong.
Yeah, because of their upbringing and the way they think and the fucking how they.
Are they
get
still wrong?
exposed.
You're not getting it.
I don't know.
You're not getting it. Watch. There's no relativism here. Now you may present fallacious arguments because because you haven't been well trained with using language philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because when I say, "Oh, God exists," well, yeah, give me some.
Mm,
Yeah,
that's
okay,
different.
hold on. Or I say, "Oh, God doesn't exist." Show me where He's not exist. Show me where it's not.
Yeah.
Show me where it's not existing.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't do any of that. You can't do one or the other.
Uh-huh.
So there must be something else that's wrong about this way you're using God in the first place.
Uh-huh.
It's not relative. We're not going to leave it off at like, hey, show me God. I don't know, I can't. Show me not God. I don't know, I can't. Well, I guess it's all relative then. That's not the conclusion. The conclusion is show me God. I can't in the way you're saying it. Show me not God. I can't in the way you're saying it. Ooh, maybe you need to reevaluate how you're using this term God.
Yeah.
You might be being very sloppy about it.
Uh-huh.
And of course, all humans are, just like
Yeah,
they're
that's
being
what I'm
sloppy
saying,
about
yeah.
the term spirit, soul, mind, like everything,
Yeah.
right? How about everything, right?
Yeah.
We can't even figure out, the process of making our shoelaces, much less like, the mind, right? But then we jump to these things like it's relative. You know what moral relativism does? It allows people to be lazy and not critical enough in evaluating their stance and the stance of the people around them.
So you're saying God is not relative, in a sense, right?
No, there's no way God can be relative.
Yeah.
You can talk about, and here's the funny thing.
Uh-huh.
Remember, philosophy's tricky, right?
Uh-huh.
It's if you don't catch the little subtle notion, you're going to make vast mistakes, right? You can talk about God in a relativistic way.
Uh-huh.
But if we start to get down what we're trying to capture here when we talk about God, right?
Yeah.
It's going to change,
Mhm.
right? All of a sudden, we're not going to be able to talk about it in this relativistically flim-flam way.
Yeah.
Relativism is, you could say, measured against. For some reason, you were not trying to like this, but like math, right?
Isn't that considered? Is that like a priori?
Now,
intellect, or like where it's like something that is known before you even really know
it's going to be
like,
what it is, no matter if you experience it for the first time or the
Exactly,
80th time.
Is
or
that
not.
what it's called? Is it
a priori?
Yeah, a priori. Yeah.
A priori is knowledge that is based on the way
It just is.
something must be. Well, it's still.
Like you don't have to experience it to know it. Like when you touch something like that's hot or that's cold, that's a different type of knowledge as opposed to just knowing that 1 + 1 = 2. Like you don't
It's
have
not that you don't have to
Yeah.
see. These are so subtle when you get. It's not that you don't have to experience to know it. It's that, you don't have to experience it. It's that it makes its own sense whether you experience it or not.
Oh yeah, that
Right?
makes sense.
It makes its own sense whether you experience it or not. You have to still experience math in order to know
Yeah,
that 1 +
obviously.
1 is 2. Somewhere
Yeah.
somebody has to show you it at some point. But and the rest of it is what you're investing in it, what you're bringing to it, what experience and behavior and all that stuff. But anyways, okay, that was. And I'm not saying you're wrong. And I'm trying to present the other argument, but I think.
I'm just talking about people's states of mind.
It's mainly that I hear
It's
too
like-
many beginning philosophy students try and say it's all relative,
Yeah.
right? And
I think
and
maybe
they
people
do it
misuse
and they
the
do it
word.
for shit like this, like
Uh-huh.
like Nietzsche's eternal recurrence. I think this theory means this, and I'm like, well, the theory means this, and you can find it on page 183, and he actually mentions, yeah, man, but it's all relative, right? And that's exactly how it's being used, and that's the kind of main part I'm saying, like, no.
I see what you're saying,
right? Like,
well, maybe people just.
that's why I said most people are using it like it's this lazy device, like for not doing enough.
Well, I think a lot of people just misuse the word. They don't.
And like with everything.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure I do. What would you describe just relative? Like, what is, like, in simple English, like, what's relative? Like, just the meaning of it, Because most of the time I use it within context, but when someone says, like, explain it or whatever, like, it's...
I see restaurant-style white tortilla chips relative to my position.
Uh-huh.
You see some other shit relative to your position.
Mm.
There's no gray area there. No flim-flam.
But you're still using the word relative.
It's
Like, how would you describe
Right,
it?
I said that. Relative to my position, I see the front of the bag.
But,
Relative to your position, you see the back of the bag.
But when I say, what do you mean by relative? Like, you know what I mean? Like, describe the definition.
Based on my experiential angle, I think that'd be good enough. Because it's not implying physical or mental, it's implying both, just experiential. From my perspective, right? From my perspective, it is objective that I see this only and you only see this. That's objective from my perspective, right? And because we know for sure that I only see this and you only see that, we can say that there is a relativism going on.
Some type of relation.
Right?
Yeah.
So relative just means that there's more than one. I guess you could put that, right?
It's a weird word.
If you only have
like,
one point in the universe, then nothing is relative to it. But the minute you put one other point in the universe, now you've created relativity, and even weirder, and now you've created everything else too. Space, number, like all these things.
Yeah.
We only have one of stuff though, which there's no such thing.
Yeah.
That's a weird.
It's kind of an ambiguous word. It can be used in a lot of different ways. But when it comes down to just like the aspect
I'm just
of
more
one
talking about like
point,
the shit I pointed out with that Nietzsche example. Philosophers misuse it all the low-level philosophers, beginning philosophers misuse it all the time, and they basically use it to like justify their wrong interpretations of shit. Right?
Kill like the search for different interpretation. It just says, oh yeah, it's just relative. Okay, what's
it's all
next?
relative,
yeah.
right?
Of
like,
course.
Oh,
I mean, yeah,
like,
of course
think
it is.
About this
but
shit.
I mean, like,
okay, how do we make this political
relative,
system work? How do we make it so that we have a good economy? Oh, it's all relative, man.
Yeah.
Oh, well, no, maybe there are actually some shit that we could figure out that's going wrong.
Yeah. No, it's all relative.
and fix a couple things. Man, come on, it's all relative. But see, maybe what you want to say is maybe some of it is, sure, but maybe some of it isn't, and you're bypassing it.
Yeah.
And let's get to those little things where, oh, wait a minute, that wasn't relative.
Yeah.
There was a glitch in some accounting thing, and they were like spending money off to this side, and there's nothing relative about that, is there?
I mean, it's relative.
It's that we needed to get that error fixed, right?
It just doesn't matter if it's relative or not. I think. You know,
What?
I think it's too obvious of a statement. Everything is relative.
It's not rich,
but it doesn't matter.
It's not rich.
Yeah,
it isn't.
Like,
it's all relative. Like, well, okay, then shut up for the rest of your life because it's all relative, right?
Move on. Right? That's
and it's not all relative. Put your pants on your head and walk around. Put your shirt on your bottom and put your pants on your head and walk around. It's not all relative.
But that could be relative to you not wanting to like adhere to the aspects of pants and shit.
You can always tweak it and find these really minute little points.
Yeah.
But see, the thing
it's all relative.
But see, the thing is that would be silly, and that's not rich.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not a hard, fast anything. I wouldn't say never use the term relativism, right? Because it's very important. But when it gets to philosophy and shit like that, that's when people get real sloppy with it and use it for lameness, right?
I can see that.
It's better to talk about relativity when you're talking about objective things, like points in space. You know what I mean? The minute you start to talk about subjective things, relativity, it's almost like language gets sloppy and people didn't want to do the work to really figure out what they're saying and what they're trying to get across and what they believe.
Yeah.
Right?
That's our education system too. So we're just not taught the importance of words. I know for sure we're not because I'm a victim of it.
We just assume it'll all... Because we just assume it'll all be forced upon us. Like, you can't get away with calling that pillow blue for too long before people are just going to make it known, like, you're totally fucking up the whole way we do things here. Start calling it red. We call it red in this language, right? Like, it'd be real frustrating if every time, because you'd be doing it all the time. It'd be like, hand me the blue cup, and we'd be like, I don't see it. You'd be like, yeah, and you'd be pointing to the red cup, and it'd be like,
yeah, it wouldn't work.
Like, I want my own language.
But you could say that that's because it's not relative to the standard template that humans use, you know, when you say that it's blue. Of course, it's not relative, but it's... Because you're saying that that's not relative.
It's like, I'm not sure, we're on slippery ground here, but maybe when the first people were trying to figure out words for shit, right? And you know, they kept associating an utterance with red, right? Then then there could have been maybe something relative, because maybe half the tribe wanted to call it red and the other half wanted to call it rog, right? And so there could have maybe, I'm not even sure if this is right, but at some point it would have just been naturally assumed the majority would have won, I guess, and said we call it red. And at that point there's no relativism, because it more like becomes this decided upon definition, right?
Yeah.
And it's not relative because it was never really fixed in the first place. We just decided we're going to call it red. So when you come along and say, well, it's all relative, I'm going to call it blue, what we're going to say is, well, that doesn't work for our communication game, right? And so it's not relative. If you want to play our communication game, you've got to play by the communication game's rules, which are not relative in lots of cases.
Yeah.
Right? So...
Well, yeah, that's what happens with language. I guess it's like
we can't have language without people.
It's dual. It's dualistic. Once something is, other people will be like, oh, well, I want to do something. Yeah, language
What's
totally
dualistic?
creates
Language
duality.
Creates,
I mean, it is a part of it. How does it not, right?
Hold on, it's a tough one. Language creates the duality. No.
Well, then...
existence creates... If you want to use duality in that term, existence creates duality because it makes you not omniscient. We're not born hive-minded. We're born limited into our one singular perspective of things. And so by the minute we're born and we understand that, it's us in the world. There's the duality, right? There's us in the world.
Yeah, I mean...
That's the first dualism, that I am not the whole world, right? Now, later on, I can intellectually come to understand that, in fact, I am the whole world and get past the dualisms, right?
Yeah.
But not in the beginning, right? In the beginning, I feel that it's me, and then there's outside of me, and that's the first dualism.
Yeah, but isn't that language right there in itself? Like the way you
that's the
understand
beginning of language. That there's a this and a that.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
That's the beginning of all language.
Creates
you get that, right? That's
creates
the
duality
beginning
thinking.
of all language, that there's a this and a that.
It creates like a dualistic state of mind, because in nature by itself, like, how many rocks are the same? Like there's one rock and then there's not like an opposite of a rock. It's just they're all different rocks, But
what if there are a bunch of the same rocks? Given enough rocks, there'd have to be same ones, right? Or I mean, there's different. There could never be ultimately the same infinitesimally similar quark combination. Couldn't be perfectly similar. And even then, what if there were? How would we know?
Yeah, but it doesn't work in duality. There's not like one type of rock and then another type of rock. There's just all different kinds of fucking rocks, like all different kinds. But I mean, we come in with our filters and the language and say like, oh, this is a rock, this tree is not a rock, or something like that, like in a sense.
That's not dualism, is it?
I mean, it's
now I'm wondering what are we using dualism? A dualism.
Well, I guess it's not really, but I mean,
when something,
it's like a on and off, like a yes or no, like this is that and this is not that. But I don't know, that doesn't work either. Anyway.
I'm trying to think a dualism, like.
But that's kind of...
Because I'm trying to get to the mindset where dualisms are probably just tricks of language that people who aren't thinking enough get caught in. And ultimately, it's like maybe there must be dualism. I'm trying to think like an actual case of a dualism that I can't explain away. And now I'm fucking with my own head. But I've been frustrated this morning, so... Like what's a dualism? Give me a dualism. Like mind-body, right? That's the classical. There's the mind-body dualism.
Well,
but that seems so old-fashioned to me that I don't see any dualism there whatsoever. I just see that as like, in this case, you're using language to talk about these processes. In this case, you're using language to talk about these processes. There were never any dualism going on. They're just different stuff to talk about. Like, does that mean it's more like the dial? Where's the dualism on the dial? Like, even if you're all the way on the other end of the dial, that's just, right now you're on that setting. Yeah. That's the setting you're focused on.
Well,
right? It doesn't negate or even change.
I think it's just the beginning of an understanding of the whole volume knob thing, because, there's up and then there's down, but how up are you?
But now I'm wondering, is there real dualism? Maybe there is a real dualism.
I mean, up and down, left and right, that's dual. That's dualistic in its nature right there.
No, because, not really, no.
almost
it's
now we're talking
bi-directional.
like up and down. Even that's all like relative. I don't even know if there's not dualism, because even then they're the same thing, right?
Or
That's even more so. There's
I mean,
up
yes
and down
and no,
is just based on
but-
where your perspective is. So there's no duality again there. See what I mean, though?
Yeah.
What is it that we meant when we said dualism? See, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, a lot of these things happen because we take a lot of language that we throw around so casually
Yeah.
for granted,
Well,
right?
I mean, relative and not relative is kind of dualism, right there, right? I mean,
but then again, I'm saying, so this is going to take.
I see what you're saying, though. I mean,
because those are just weird concepts with no like
on like a
real
basic,
there's nothing really to them,
on
right?
I think like on a basic understanding, there is that, but then once you realize the whole like percentage aspect of things, then things get a little bit more gray. Like it's not all dualistic, but when it comes to just identifying extremes, like there are, you know.
When you want to live in extremes, then you can say like, it's weird though. Like, what can you apply dualism to? The only main thing you always hear it applied to is mind and body in philosophy, and that's been eradicated for a long time, I think. Like, people have seen past the language game of that. Like, because you wouldn't say like Democrats and Republicans, they're like a dualism. Would you say they're like a dualism? You just say they're different. You say they're different political
It's just
parties.
the opposite of something.
They're not really.
It's the opposite of something,
dualisms.
right? I mean, you can't have one without the other sometimes, you know.
Sure, you can envision a world where there's Republicans and no Democrats.
Can you,
I'm
though?
sure they can.
I mean,
Right? I'm sure they got that.
Yeah, but they exist for a reason.
They dream of it.
I mean, they exist for a reason because that's not how it works here. You know, it's a weird.
It's just gonna always be a dissident, but I don't even know if that's a dualism. That's just part of the whole, like when the guy at UCI for the Hindu books was talking about the diamond, right? Where's the diamond? Where's the dualism in a diamond? There's not. There's just different facets.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if you pull out far enough, yeah. I mean.
There was something interesting happening there. I'm just not quite sure what it was.
Up is down, take is give, in is out, whisper, shout, there's no doubt, it's all relative.